All right. Good evening. Good evening to you. Ooh. Good evening. Good evening to you. You. Good evening. Good evening. Won't you share with a friend or two? Good evening. Good evening to you. You. Good evening. Good evening to you. Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope that you all have been having a great and wonderful day. I have been having a great and long day. But it's been a productive day. As I told someone today, I said I cannot complain. I asked the Lord to keep me booked and busy and purposeful, and He has been doing that, so I have no complaints. Let me make sure that our podcast audience is on with us. So, good evening and welcome to another episode of Daring Dialogues. I am your host tonight, Shantae Charles. It is Friday. I like to call it Get Free Friday. This is the time to sort of let it all go. It's the time to think about what you want to be doing over the weekend. It's a time to relax your mind and rewind and unwind and think about your accomplishments for the week. So, all of that, I hope that people are having the opportunity to do. So, tonight we are going to be taking a look at, let's see, we've got 3 women icons in music and 1 woman icon, recent icon, in the movie space and the television writing space. So we're going to start with her first tonight out of the Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls. There are actually 100 different stories in here, and as you can see, we've been rolling through the stories, but I'm definitely not going to be able to finish, right? Because we just finished the mark for Women's History Month in March, and so I'm taking today to do 3 more women in the music, and then I'm going to be closing with Issa, but I do recommend that you get these books. I'm going to keep reading them. They won't necessarily be under the Women's History Month marker, but I am going to be continuing reading from these books. So let's take a look, and I want to welcome you to April as well. But we're going to look at Issa Rae. Issa Rae. Some people say Issa, some people say Issa, but I believe it's Issa Rae. She is an actor, writer, and producer. She was born January 12th, 1985, in the United States. Once there was a girl named Issa who grew up in the 1990s watching funny stories about black families on TV. But as she got older, she had a hard time finding shows about black characters that resembled real life. Issa fell in love with acting in high school. In college, she created and filmed her own series called Dorm Diaries. Students watched and shared it with their friends. Soon, college students across the country were hooked. After college, Issa moved to New York City to pursue her film career. But one night, something awful happened. Thieves broke into her apartment and stole all her filmmaking equipment. They even took the scripts that she had written. Issa was devastated. Later, she sat down, sad and frustrated, and wrote in her journal, "I'm awkward and black." A light bulb went off. Issa realized she could create a comedy series with a fresh perspective without any of the stereotypes that she grew up watching. It would be about a girl just like her, young, awkward, and filled with all sorts of thoughts and emotions. Issa wrote and starred in the show and put it on YouTube. And Awkward Black Girl became a hit. Then she worked her her gift again, creating a successful show about the friendship between two young black women, this time for TV. Issa also started a company to support black writers and help bring their projects to life. She wants other creators like her to be seen and supported in Hollywood and beyond. She says, I like to challenge myself. I like to outdo the last thing I did. I often say the only person I am in competition with is myself. So I totally understand her perspective on that. The next book, we have three iconic women who raised their voice from the book She Raised Her Voice, 50 Black Women Who Sang Their Way into Music History. First up for tonight is Mavis Staples. Mavis Staples. Mavis was born July 10th, 1939. She is still alive, and she's got a birthday coming up. Her genres are R&B and gospel. She is a gospel music icon. She says, I'm singing these songs to inspire you, to keep you going, to lift you up and give you a reason to get up in the morning. In 1950, long before Mavis Staples finished high school or recorded her first solo album, she was a singer in her family's gospel group, the Staples Singers, which included her father, Roebuck Pop Staples, her sisters, Cleotha and Yvonne, and her brother, Purvis. The group traveled and sang in local churches around Chicago and released their first hit song, Uncloudy Day, in 1956. Mavis and her family would go on to be spiritual leaders of the civil rights movement after recording a song called Why Am I Treated So Bad in 1957. The song was about the Little Rock Nine, the first group of black students who attended a mostly white school in Arkansas after segregation became illegal. This song led Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. to ask the Staples Singers to perform at many of his speaking engagements, as their mixture of music and activism brought hope and strength to the cause. One such example was their song, Long Walk to D.C., highlighting the years of protests that were taking place. The Staples Singers climbed to their musical peak in the 70s with the release of their well-known song, I'll Take You There. Mavis loved her family very much, but it was important for her to find her own voice and strike out on her own. She released her first solo album, Mavis Staples, in 1969 and Only for the Lonely in 1970. Then, in 1984, Mavis became friends with the music superstar Prince. They recorded 3 albums together, Mavis Staples in 1984, Time Waits for No One in 1989, and The Voice in 1993. These albums show that Mavis was good at working with younger musicians. Her music was sampled by hip-hop artists Salt and Pepper, Ludacris, and others. She had a good connection with young songwriters that made her music feel fresh, even though she had been singing for more than 50 years. In 1996, she released a collaboration with musician Lucky Peterson called Spirituals in Gospel, dedicated to Mahalia Jackson, an album that paid respect to the iconic gospel singer who was a family friend and a musical inspiration to Mavis. She also had a close friendship with famous folk singer Bob Dylan. In fact, Dylan fell in love with Mavis and asked for her hand in marriage when they were young. She didn't marry him, but they did record Gonna Change My Way of Thinking in 2003 and toured together in 2016. Mavis released her most recent album, We Get By, in 2019, just before her 80th birthday. Mavis has a laugh that brightens any room she enters. She's young at heart and lives life to the very fullest. Her gospel music has been able to touch diverse audiences because of her willingness to experiment with different producers, which makes her albums feel fresh and youthful. Her music is down to earth and simply lovely to listen to. Her lifetime of musical excellence will guide future gospel musicians to creating authentic and touching music. And I'm going to add authentic, touching music full of activism and inspiring a new generation of activists, hopefully. All right, this next young lady I have never heard of. until now, but I'm certainly going to go search out some of her music, and that is Polystyrene. Born July 3rd, 1957, transition April 25th, 2011, genre is punk, the pioneer of women in punk. She said, "Some people think little girls should be seen and not heard, but I think, oh, bondage up yours." I think that might be translated into who cares? I don't really care. Polystyrene had a style all her own. She was an explorer from an early age. Polly wasn't very interested in school, even though her mother, who raised her as a single parent, thought teaching her to type would help her finish her education and find a professional career. On the contrary, when Polly was 15, she packed her bags and hitchhiked around Europe, going to music festivals, living in hippie culture, which was very exciting to her. While she was young, Polly tried different life paths, giving fashion design and pop reggae singing a chance. When she was 18, she recorded her first song using her real name. Marianne Joan Elliott said, but she didn't feel that singing reggae was ultimately a good fit for her. Everything changed for Polly in 1976 when she attended a Sex Pistols concert and discovered her love of punk music. Soon after the show, she saw an ad in the local newspaper looking for young punks who want to stick it together. Because of her love of community and what she saw at the show, she decided to start her own punk rock band. When she looked for a name to call her band, she knew she wanted something that described the time she was living in. So she chose her band name, which she felt was synthetic and not authentic, X-Ray Specs. Her band included guitar player Jack Airport, bass player Paul Dean, drummer Paul B.P. Herding, and saxophonist Laura Logic. They released their first song, Oh Bondage Up Yours, in 1977, and later put out a full album called Germ Free Adolescence. This album is now considered a classic punk record, and Polystyrene is said to be a woman who sparked the American female punk scene known as Riot Girl, where women sang heavy punk songs pushing back against violence and stereotypes of all women. Polly was a natural on stage, wearing metal braces on her teeth and cool military style jackets and hats. She was strong, confident, and wonderful to watch while performing. X-Ray Specs broke up after recording their first and only album, but Polly went on to record solo albums entitled Translucence, Gods and Goddesses, and Flower Aeroplane in 2004. Her music touched people all over the world for many years, and she performed at music festivals right up to the time of her death in 2011. Polly's daughter, Celeste Bell, made a documentary called Polystyrene, I Am a Cliche, to share the memory of her mother and her impact on women punk musicians. Polly was unique and will never lose her place as an important person who changed punk music forever. Polystyrene. And last but not least, out of this book, as I said, there are a few more iconic singers. We've actually managed to get through the majority of them. The ones we won't cover tonight are Nancy Wilson, Dinah Washington, Dionne Warwick, Sarah Vaughan, Ari Up, Tina Turner, and Big Mama Thornton. So we're going to stop at Sister Rosetta Tharp. But again, I do encourage you to get the book. Sister Rosetta Tharp, born March 20th, 1915, transitioned October 9th, 1973. Rock and roll, the godmother of rock and roll. She said, "Can't no man play like me. I play better than a man." Legend has it that Sister Rosetta Tharp influenced the sound of modern rock and roll. She was the first to make the electric guitar popular in gospel and soul music, creating a new sound that inspired rock stars like the Rolling Stones, Elvis Presley, and Little Richard. She was born Rosetta Newman to talented musician mother who played the mandolin and worked as a traveling preacher. Her mother encouraged little Rosetta to play guitar so she could use her instrument to spread the gospel. Dum, 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 dum. By the time she was 6, Rosetta and her mom had set out on the road accompanying a troupe of musicians and ministers to share their music with others. A few years later, in the mid 1920s, Rosetta and her mother moved to Chicago, where Rosetta became known as a prodigy, meaning a young musical genius. No one had seen such a young black girl play the guitar so well. At 19, Rosetta married a preacher named Thomas Tharp, and she changed her last name to his. Their marriage lasted only 4 years, but she kept her married name until the end of her life. At 23, Rosetta and her mother moved to New York, which helped Rosetta's music career blossom quickly. One of the first songs she recorded was Rock Me, a song she is still famous for today. It has joyful gospel lyrics, and Rosetta's upbeat guitar is what became the sound of early rock and roll. Every song she released in her first years of recording albums became a hit. In 1938, she played famous nightclubs and concert halls like the Cotton Club and Carnegie Hall, touching new audiences who instantly loved her unique gospel style. As Sister Rosetta became more and more famous with jazz and blues music fans, the more American Christian and gospel communities got upset that she was playing in nightclubs to people they considered to be ungodly. Even though Sister Rosetta made it a point to play mostly gospel songs because that was the music she grew up with and loved very much, she felt she had a bigger purpose in her life: to touch people all over the world with all types of music. Sister Rosetta toured for many years, and her most famous shows occurred in Europe in 1964, where she performed many of her hit songs such as Up Above My Head, Strange Things Happening Every Day. Her UK shows are said to have sparked the creation of early British rock and roll. Without her music and world travels, it's hard to know what music would sound like today. She is the godmother of rock and roll, laying the groundwork for modern music. Sister Rosetta Tharp. All right. So I hope that you've been enjoying these lessons on iconic women. And if you would like to join me and give your insight on the women tonight, you can feel free, as this is the month of April and we have basically 3 shows left to the season. I do want to let you know that Monday, we're going to be on the Black Table Talk page on Facebook. So if you have not found my Black Table Talk page, we've got 30,000 plus people over there that we'll be talking with on Monday night. And we're going to be talking about Black women in their 40s. And it's going to be an interesting conversation. I hope you will come over to our Black Table Talk page on Facebook and join us for that conversation happening at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be talking about the future of Blackness, the future of Black women. And it's going to be an insightful conversation with Elle Michelle, who is busting open doors for Black women in the AR/VR space. So I encourage you to make sure you join us for that conversation on Monday night, again, 6 p.m. on Black Table Talk Facebook page. If you are listening by Anchor, I want to thank you for your time and attention tonight, and we hope to see you this weekend with Life Nation. Sunday Dialogue will be on Anchor. Take care and have a blessed weekend. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I am great.
Okay,
It's been a peaceful day.
I want to start with Rosetta Tharp because I actually knew a sister Rosetta Tharp. It wasn't her, but I actually knew one that tried to play the piano a little bit.
Okay.
But anyway, uh, great information on her. But what drew my attention was some people having a problem with her because she was playing music for ungodly people.
Mm-hmm.
You and I both know she got a lot of ungodly people up in the church, even up in the pulpit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm like, there's ungodly people everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Everywhere. So.
I mean, we would love to think that everybody who comes to church is a believer and loves God and is there for the right reasons, but we just know that that's just not true.
It's not.
And so,
We
yeah,
don't live in we don't live in that illusion.
no, not at all.
We live in reality. You got some that live there, but not us.
As a matter of fact, I would often joke that most of the time when I was going to a church, it was often lots of warfare just for me to get on the grounds and through the door and serve in my capacity at the time because of all of those other factors happening during that space of time. People with egos, people with bad motives and
Yeah.
intents, people trying to
Yeah.
undermine what you were trying to do for God,
Yeah.
people with jealousy and envy. Like you had to wade through all of that to serve God sincerely.
Yes. Yes.
So I don't miss certain aspects of institutional church.
I don't either.
And I'm a pastor. So
Yeah. Yeah. I don't either.
you
I
are not
remember.
going to see
I
me
remember on the
telling
praise
people
team.
you are not going to see me telling people you better get in that building. It's not going to happen for me. Now you might hear it from someone else, but I'm not doing that to people.
No. 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 I remember on the praise team I was on. There was this one person that had a huge ego, and the son happened to play the drums. Now, sister girl could tear a solo up, but as far as group singing,
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the one.
Mm-hmm.
The original pastor knew that, so she wouldn't place her over anything. She also knew the spirit she operated in. Now, this new pastor comes along, here's her singer solo, and automatically she places her over the praise team. Okay, now why is it that she was never placed over the praise team before? That should have been her first thought and her question. See, but it wasn't. You want to talk about some chaos? And then her son played the drums, and everybody was about her, because she can run through some scales and stuff like that. Big deal. She had strategy, so she can get you to come along with her. Big deal. Her son was always up playing the drum, and that's what they like, that beat. Bam, bam. Oh.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes he wouldn't be there, and if she wasn't there, it's like it would be a drag because they're looking for her. It would be a drag. So I got to the place, something that I was trained not to do. I got to the place where I just closed my eyes and said, I'm going in for me.
Mm-hmm.
If y'all want to come along, y'all come on, but I'm not looking at y'all dead folks sitting out there like you're just sitting there, like not even waiting on a meal, but just sitting there, just taking up space. I ain't the one to do that. So I started going in for myself, and the rest of the praise team came along with me. So we getting ours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we getting our worship on. The spirit is moving and everything, but y'all sitting there. Now, it would so happen that every now and then they would feel it, and they would go ahead and come along. But it's like they just fought and fought and fought not to get along with it because she wasn't there.
But it also goes into this whole sort of in some ministries, I won't say all, this whole idea of the hype man or the hype woman.
Right.
Like there are people that think as the worship leader, I'm supposed to hype you up and stir you to worship and serve God. And my thing is, if I have to do all of that, um, is it really sincere, or is it just, you wanting to appease the person that's leading? And so then it becomes, I'm praising because they're telling me to, versus I'm praising because I know God is worthy.
Exactly.
If I know God is worthy
Exactly.
and I know what I came here to do, um, I don't need a cheerleader. I don't need a hype man or a
Right.
hype woman if I understand who God is to me and my value and my worth in him, and I'm very thankful for what God has done. So I may go into that.
Mm-hmm.
I may go into a praise of God, and that my personal praise of God may unction you to say, "Oh yeah, when I think about God and I start to meditate on the things he's done for me, then that ushers me into a place." But there are people that say, "Get up, lift your hands, hop 3 times, spin and
Mm-hmm.
turn around, come on and praise him." Oh, I know that's not all y'all got. Like, I'm not doing all that.
Me either. Me either. Me either. I'm not with that. I just don't.
I mean, I get it. I understand why they're doing it, because they feel that they have an obligation to pump and prime people, but I don't feel that obligation.
Nah, me either. Either you praise God because you want to, or you don't. That's how I feel about it. I'm gonna get mad. You just sit there and miss yours. I'm gonna get mad.
And so
But
when we were in a building, what we would often do is we would sing, we would do congregational singing. Sometimes we would have musical accompaniments, and we would let people just be free in how they wanted to praise God, right? Um, some people would some people would get down on the floor and just lay there and listen to the music. Some people would get up and walk around and praise and lift their hands and sing along.
mm-hmm.
Some people would sit there quietly and cry and thank God
Mm-hmm.
quietly. So
Yes.
we weren't trying to facilitate a this is the way to do it. This is how you do
Right.
it.
Right.
And I know a lot of
Right.
places
I
do
think
that,
everybody should have their own way.
but
Yeah. Whole
I believe that you should be honoring your creator in the way that you feel is honorable, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everybody's not a
Yeah.
jumper,
Yeah.
everybody's not a shouter.
Right. I'm more of the crier type. Like if somebody else is singing, doing praise and worship, and I'm sitting out there, I'm gonna sing along with them. I'm gonna get along with them. But my thing is more of a tear shedding type thing,
Mm-hmm.
or I may scream or shout a praise, but that's about it. See,
Mm-hmm.
that's basically how I move. So everybody has their own way, and I agree with you. You allow them to praise God, their way of praising God,
Mm-hmm.
as long as they're doing it. You let them do it. Let them have their way with that. That's their personal thing with God at that point. Allow them to do what's personal between them and God. That's
Yes.
it. Um, uh, and one thing, I'm going to move on to Mavis. But before I go there, I want to say this about church. This is one thing that really bothers me when somebody's standing up there, nothing's going on, and they say everybody speaking your heavenly language.
Oh boy.
All of a sudden you hear all these other tongues, and I'm looking around. I'm like, really? Really?
There's a whole lot I could say about tongues and languages. The main thing I will say is they are actual languages. They really are. I had an incident the other day that, like, I just laughed to myself. I was at my computer and I was taking a break and I was praying, and I was praying in my personal language to the Lord, and my computer picked up what I was saying and it put the Google Translate up.
Mm-hmm.
My guest is Pastor Ben Lockett. He is on IG. We're also having this conversation live on our IG, and our IG page is at Daring Dialogues, one word. So if you want to join us over there, you're also welcome to join us there. And so it started translating what I was saying, and it popped up, and I took a picture of it, and it said Hausa, which is an
Mm-hmm.
African tongue. So when the scriptures talks about the gift of tongues, they are talking about the gift of language, or the ability to communicate in another language that you did not have to formally learn.
Mm-hmm.
So when people are speaking in other languages or other tongues, it is real languages. I didn't learn Hausa, but I also say this, um, that kind of information is now available to us because of technology, right? To know what languages we are actually speaking in. And I believe it also has something to do with your DNA, because my ancestry is Mali, Congo, Nigerian, and Ghanaian. And I know Hausa is a Nigerian tongue.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something coming out of my genetics, but it's also, to me, indicative. The tongues that you're speaking in is also indicative of the places you may be called to.
Mm-hmm.
My first television, like international television, opportunities came through someone from the Nigerian royal family. They had a television
Okay.
station in Virginia, or they had a global program in Virginia, and they invited me to come and be their host. And I was their host for like 2 years, and they broadcast all over the continent of Africa, and mainly um, Nigerian towns and everything were tuned in to that broadcast. So
Mm-hmm.
there's an audience over in Nigeria that knows me more so than people in the United States, because of
Listen,
that,
now,
because of that connection. So
now you
sometimes,
just said,
hmm?
go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So sometimes the language that's coming out of us spiritually can also speak to what nations we may be called to minister to.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, when I'm speaking in my personal language with God, I often get Arabic. I'm often speaking Arabic. And
Mm-hmm.
lo and behold, I have lots of Arabic people that listen to my music. Again, more so than people here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that if we take time, we can start parceling out some of these insights that God is trying to reveal to us about who we are and our purposes that's here in the earth. You do not need an invitation to follow this page. Feel free to follow and share. Go
Now,
ahead.
you were talking about how you're more popular in Africa and all those things. Well, I have a small following here. You know, people that are on my line, they most of them are here in the United States. But when it comes to my social media, even though people respond, my biggest response and feedback are from people in Africa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People in Africa. I mean, there were people that didn't. All they knew was my name. They didn't know I was a pastor or whatever, apostle or prophet or whatever. But there was some that would text, that would inbox me.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I had this dream. Could you interpret it?
Yeah.
Or one young lady, and I'm going to try to do a Zoom with her and this apostle, because the apostle had a dream that lines up with this thing that's happening to this young girl in Africa. She's actually been living a what we call an open vision. She's been living it,
Wow.
not just for a few minutes. I'm talking about days. Well, the day is the same. She know the day is changing, but the same thing is happening. Like Groundhog Day, the
Mm-hmm.
same thing is happening. It's not moving on. And when she told me about that, I heard the Holy Spirit tell me exactly what that was. You know, and He told me that, and I broke it down to her and explained it to her. And she would go. Her people think she's going crazy, but she's not.
Mm.
This is actually God using her for a message.
Wow.
And this apostle told a few days later, I was talking to an apostle friend of mine. She was telling me about a dream she had. And her dream lines up with what the interpretation was for this girl.
Wow.
And I want to get her and the apostle together and another pastor friend of mine. That's because of what this other pastor is teaching lines up with the vision and the dream. So
Yeah,
that's
that's amazing. I want to take this
yeah.
question over here on YouTube.
Okay.
Adam Brim says, "Do you have any views on how reggae or Bob Marley and Peter Tosh influence? Is that Kai, Zimbabwe?" I don't. I will say that I grew up listening to some Bob Marley, but I was really young, and so I didn't understand until later years how spiritual his messages were.
Uh-huh.
So I would be listening to it because of the beat and singing along. Like I didn't realize that Exodus had a double entendre or double meanings or multiple meanings behind it until I got older. Yesterday, if you catch yesterday's broadcast, we actually talked about Sister Nancy and her influence with reggae music. We covered her on yesterday. But no, I don't have any specific views about Bob Marley and Peter Tosh. I would have to look into it before I made a comment. Very religious and black empowering. Yes. And that's what I'm saying. I didn't realize until I got older how spiritual his music was and how
Uh-huh.
prophetic his music was
Right.
too, because he was talking about a
Right.
coming day
Uh-huh.
in a lot of his songs. Coming days
Uh-huh.
of freedom, um, the end of empire. There's lots of themes in Marley's music that um, I think people should listen to and not sort of discount it as just something you can bob your head to. Because I mean, you can bob to it, right? But there are definitely some deeper meanings in those songs. Definitely.
Uh-huh.
Final thoughts, Pastor Ben.
Okay. Mabel Staples. Now, I'll take you there.
Mavis Staples.
That was it. I think, yeah, Mavis Staples. That was the one that I think really drew people to her, would make people realize, okay, wait a minute, you know, what is this? Because it was like gospel,
Mm-hmm.
but it was also a message of basically like a civil rights movement type thing with it. You know, when
Now,
you
is
got to a
this
place, ain't nobody crying, ain't nobody worried, ain't no smiling faces, lying to the
okay?
racists.
I didn't realize
Yeah.
that was I didn't realize that was her. So the Winans remade that.
Yeah, that was her. That was a Staples thing. They did that originally.
Okay. Mavis Staples, I'll take you there. Yeah, that's like an iconic song. And I
Yeah.
think it's also iconic in terms of how they interjected sort of like blues type beats
Uh huh.
into it. I think that was
Yeah.
probably one of the first times with gospel music that song, if
Yeah.
I'm not
They
mistaken.
were right in there with the beginning of crossover.
Yeah. Okay.
See, they were in there with the beginning of crossover because many people jammed and danced to it. But if you actually listen to the words,
Mm-hmm.
you're like Bob Marley. You know, there's a message, but it's got a nice beat. So you
Mm-hmm.
just bob to the beat. You know, so but yeah, they came along right around that era, and you know, and they did it. I mean, they were one of everybody knew Pops. Everybody loved him and his guitar. Everybody loved him. We loved that group. See, because they were
Yeah, I'm
so
gonna have
thick,
to.
and when they hit hard.
I will have to check out their version because I've only heard the Winans version of "I'll Take You There," so I definitely need to go
Even in CC.
back. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I need to go back and check out her version. So
Yes.
this
But
has been a great conversation, Pastor Ben. I appreciate you coming on, always sharing your thoughts and your insights. If you ever want to jump on to the conversation piece, we generally open up with reading first, and then we move into conversation. So our conversations are held on our IG page simultaneously, which is what you're listening to now. If you ever want to talk back to me, just hop over to IG at During Dialogues and click on the camera. I think you have to follow the page first before it allows you to click in, but I'll bring you on. And if you want to share some insights about what we're saying, or you have some insights that are fact based and research based, we will be happy to hear them. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I've been your host tonight, Shantae Charles. I want to thank you for your time and attention. On Monday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to be on our Facebook page, Black Table Talk. Join us there with 30,000 other people who are also interested in all things Black. Black people, Black love, Black issues, Black politics, Black business, and more. We're going to be having a conversation Monday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that conversation is geared to the future is Black. What is happening with Black people, Black women in their 40s? If you are a Black woman in your 40s, we want to hear from you on Monday night. So please tune in and feel free to jump into the conversation that we're going to be having on that Facebook page. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness. So continue to go out and be what, Pastor Ben?
light.
Be light. Take care, everyone. Peace and blessings.